where we have to start today is with what LeBron James said, what was said about what he said, and how we got here. So first, a level set of what happened. Anthony Edwards was asked about being face of the league, and he was like, I don't really have an interest in it. I just want a ball. LeBron was then asked about that as the face of the league, and LeBron said, yeah, I don't blame him. Why would you want to be when all the people who talk about our league, and it seemed like he was about to say former players and media, but instead it was just a catch-all, just shit on the players. And then, as Bomani Jones would say, hit dog gon' holler. And then all the guys who LeBron was talking about doth protested too much. So the first one was Stephen A., who did a 5-minute rant in response to LeBron that, and I am not exaggerating when I say this, in the first 90 seconds of Stephen A. responding to LeBron saying that the biggest voices in the media just go after you repeatedly, particularly if you're the face of the league. In the first 90 seconds of a response to that, Stephen A. blamed LeBron James for the following: the downfall of the slam dunk contest, the lockout in 2011, and the Chris Paul Laker trade being nixed. He put it all at LeBron's feet. All of it. He's like, ruined the dunk contest because you wouldn't participate. And then said the decision was what led to the owners locking the players out and changing the collective bargaining agreement, and then threw the CP3 trade in as kind of a little dessert after a delicious entree. And didn't really, to my ear, address any of what LeBron actually said. And then, and I couldn't believe this, and let me say this as well, I have a really good relationship with Stephen A. I actually texted with him this morning, but so I don't want people to think that there's like media beef, but he knows this. We both have strong opinions. We disagree. I disagree with a lot of what he says. He's a big boy, grown man. He understands none of that's personal. And so I'm not trying to start something. That guy's a friend of mine. I just think he's out of his mind on some of this stuff. And then on his podcast, and this I won't put on him, and, appreciate those producers of that podcast because they put us on their, friendly relationships. And Demonte, this will blow your mind. Again, in addressing LeBron James saying that if you're the face of the league, you get extra criticism, get shit on. When Stephen A. brought that up on his podcast, you know what video played alongside it? Like the soundless, what we call B-roll highlights? Hand to God. It was Bronny's bad minutes against the Sixers. That's true. Go look. Go watch. So, again, I don't think that's Stephen A.'s call, but it doesn't exactly dispel the narrative that, well, yeah, there might be a little unfairness here. And so that was his part of it. Bill Simmons, who is as loud and as respected and as important of an NBA voice as there is, who is an unabashed, obvious, diehard Celtic fan, who has never really been what you'd call a LeBron guy, and LeBron's never been a Simmons guy. Simmons sent out the following tweets. Celts Cavs is a wonderful NBA game between two excellent teams that's included some terrific individual performances. This next game will be splendid too. We're so lucky to be able to watch great players like Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and James Harden battling it out tonight. Just basically making fun. Just being like, this is ridiculous. Oh, everyone's got to be so positive. And then Bill went on a long history lesson on his pod this week where he was like, this is how it's always been. And then explained how we went after guys who either hadn't won or until they won, or very specific postseason failures in the moment, which is not at all what LeBron's talking about. LeBron was talking about the general conversation surrounding the league being constantly negative. And you know who totally agrees with LeBron that that's a problem? Bill Simmons. You know how I know that? Because on December 31st, Bill Simmons did an NBA pod with the great Kirk Goldsberry that is titled The All Positive NBA Show with Kirk Goldsberry, that he says at the beginning he's doing because the conversation surrounding the league has gotten too negative. So for some of these guys, even when LeBron says something they agree with, because it's LeBron saying it, they can't agree with it. And then Wilbon, on the greatest sports TV show that's ever existed, pardon the interruption, did what he always does, which is whether it is while he's on the broadcast when LeBron happens to pass Magic Johnson for career assists, or when he's addressing LeBron's comments, can't help himself but make it clear, no matter how great these guys are, they're not quite as great as the guys that happen to be playing during my personal heyday covering the league. It's crazy how that works out. And we're yet to see what the Chuckster's going to say, but we'll find out here very soon, and my guess is it'll be more of the same. So, now that I've set the table on what happened, oh yeah, and then LeBron responded with tweets. It would appear this first tweet is a response to Stephen A., where he wrote, exactly made my point, but anyways. Happy this convo has started. It ain't about face of the game, and it ain't about one person or one show. It's about the culture of basketball. The most beautiful game in the world. Our game has never been better. Incredible young stars from all over the world and some older ones too. Laughing emojis. Steph Curry should be all we're talking about today. This is after he scored 56. Let's discuss how great OKC and the Cavs have been this season in two completely different styles and break down why and how they have been. Of course, if players don't perform, we need to discuss that too and break that down. Even that can be discussed in a way, and this is the important piece of it. Even that can be discussed in a way that's not to bring finality to that player's game, but to leave room to see how that player responds, and let's watch the journey of that player. This ain't about me either. This is where I disagree with LeBron, and I'll get to that in a second. This ain't about me either. At this point, I don't really care what's said about me. It's always something. This is about the impact the negativity is having on our beautiful game and our fans. I know I speak for a lot of the players, more importantly, a hell of a lot of great fans that truly love and celebrate this sport around the world. Hashtag mind the game, then a cloud emoji, a brain emoji, and of course, a crown emoji, because what would a LeBron tweet be without the crown emoji? All right. He then went on with my pal Scott Van Pelt, made a similar point after the Laker game, and now everyone's caught up. So, to me, the question should be, is LeBron right that the coverage of the league, particularly for the super duper stars, face of the league caliber guys, too negative? And if he's right, how did we get here? So I do think he is correct, and I do think I have been a part of the problem at times. I'll explain how in a moment. And I think where I disagree with him, where he says this isn't about him, it actually is almost entirely about him and one other person. Because so much about how we currently cover the league has to do with how we covered LeBron James. Because how he was covered has impacted how every other superstar, true super duper star, is covered. So this is a point I used to make about prime Klay Thompson. The better example right now might be like Devin Booker, where I think those guys who are in the Jaylen Brown, Devin Booker tier of players, like 10 to 20, if you were ranking them, might be in the actual sweet spot because they get the same max contract as the superstar, as the super duper stars, but it is not a daily legacy referendum. When they play great in big spots, they're lauded. When they play poorly in big spots, we usually look to instead the best player on their team and why didn't he do more? And that's, I think, what Ant's comments are referring to. While he wants to be the best player on the team, obviously, he sees, man, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And so that, the reason I say this is about LeBron and one other person is the LeBron of it all is this. How many times have you been watching sports TV and heard a version of this? Sometimes by me. That's where I'll say hand up, I'm part of it. Well, after a guy misses a big shot or plays poorly in a big spot or doesn't carry his team far enough, or whatever it is, how many times have you heard this? Well, if it were LeBron, we'd be killing him. Well, if LeBron did that, and so the way LeBron was covered set a template to where it's how then Durant and Steph and Embiid and Giannis and Jokic, those MVP guys, well, fair's fair, did it to LeBron. So then we get to this question. Why did we cover LeBron that way? And that then gets to the other person in this story, the only name in all of NBA history bigger than LeBron's, and that's Michael Jordan. Because so much of our basketball, and at this point it's not just basketball, it's overall sports commentary, has been twisted is probably too strong of a word, but adjusted, tweaked, manicured to serve the legend of Michael Jordan. You saw it in some of the reaction to the Super Bowl. And Mahomes getting a loss in the biggest game. It's like, oh boy, we all know those Super Bowl losses count different than divisional round losses. That's a Michael Jordan argument. And when you look back at how we have covered this league for 40 years, there's only one guy who at each and every turn has benefited from it. And it's Michael. Let's go back to how we talk about the 1980s as a decade. Who was the face of the league in the 1980s? Oh, there wasn't a face. It was two guys. We've turned two guys into one person. Bird Magic. So why? Why was it not Magic and Bird or Bird and Magic separately? Well, in part, is it because when we turn Bird Magic into one person and don't give Larry Bird his kind of individual standing, folks right now big enough NBA fans to care about this, to be watching this pod, or to be watching this clip, probably don't know that Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, their teams played in 6 playoff games against each other, and Larry Bird was 6-0. Not in series, in games. Just easier to know Bird Magic in the 80s. What? We have totally erased one person's legacy from the... If you ask diehard NBA fans, give me your top 25 players of all time, the vast majority are going to have every single guy that was the best player on multiple championships with one glaring omission, and it'll be the same omission: Isaiah Thomas. Why? Because he has been turned into a bit player in the story of Michael Jordan. We've partially erased Akeem's legend. Well, his championships came, when Michael wasn't playing. Even though one of those championships came in a year Michael Jordan got MVP votes. We've glossed over, when people talk about Shaquille O'Neal, have you ever heard someone make this point about his greatness? At 23 years old, he outplayed. He was the best player on the court in a playoff series with Michael Jordan and beat him. No, we just pretend it didn't happen. And then the pièce de résistance of all that is the guy who was his wingman for the whole thing, Scotty. We act like he was just a 90s Ron Artest. And that included in Michael's doc. So why am I explaining that in relation to this? Because it's not only that today's face of the league or the potential faces of the league have to deal with a constant teardown of what they have or haven't accomplished. It's that the previous guy, the all-time face of the league, got the exact opposite treatment. And it is, again, if you really look at it, there's so much of how we consume today's NBA that is colored by how we have discussed and talked about these two players, Michael Jordan and LeBron James. When it comes to Michael, we elevate lesser players like Reggie Miller, who was a nice player. He was 18-3-3 for his career. He made 0 first or second all-team NBAs. That's who he was. Into a guy with almost legendary status. Why? He had that great one series against Michael. You hear more about Craig Elo, who Jordan hit the shot over, than Sidney Moncrief, who beat him in the playoffs, was one of the best defensive players ever. Why? We talk about the 90s Knicks, who had one all-star on their entire team for a decade, like this legendary opponent. Why? To build up the legend of the face of the league. Juxtapose that to how LeBron, when he was rolling through the East, the way Michael was in the 90s, we didn't build up the 60-win Hawks or the Paul George Pacers or the DeRozan Lowry Raptors into something bigger than they were. No, we went the opposite. Yes, you made 8 straight finals, but in that conference against those teams, what is it? Again, it's not that it's always been this way. It's not that it slowly became like this. It's that it did a 180. There are just certain things that, again, in service of one guy at the expense of the other, we've just decided, like, someone in some sports Bible somewhere decided, coincidentally, right around the time that this guy, LeBron, was lapping the field in every category. Actually, you know what? Longevity is not a factor in any of this. It's just, you know what? When it comes to how great a player is, how long he was great, nobody cares about that. Since when? That was literally never a part of any logical sports discussion until, again, so much of how we talk about today's league has to do with these two players. And then we get to the media piece of it. Because Bill talked about this. Yes, Michael was criticized until he won. And then once he won, he was deified to a level an athlete in this country has never been deified. And so the guys, this current generation, not this generation, the old guys of this generation, LeBron, KD, those guys, who watched that growing up, thought, man, I'm going to get that same treatment. Once I win, and I'm great, and I'm the face of the league, universal praise and adoration. And then the guys who gave that to Michael, like Wilbon, now say, we're not on your payroll. Were you on Michael's? Because that's what he got. People, it's all projection. People say to me and Shannon that, you guys, they make up in their minds this tight relationship with LeBron that we must have, while denying the reality of the pretend relationship that you're acting like we have with LeBron, Ahmad Rashad actually had with Michael. My main man, Michael Jordan. The sideline reporter for the finals was his dear friend and golf buddy. We then act like people are being honest arbiters of this. Skip, God love him, built a huge portion of his career on a singular take, which was, this guy will never be Michael Jordan, and nothing that he can do can ever change my mind on it. He could never move off that. It was the only through line, other than his Cowboys fandom, for his TV career. And then Woj, who at a point in time was not only a great reporter, the best columnist in basketball media, got iced out by LeBron's camp and just eviscerated him for years and years and years. Simmons, who crushed LeBron's family during back when he was doing running diaries about the draft, and then LeBron never had a real relationship with him, and then LeBron annihilated Simmons' Celtics, has always been a begrudging appreciator of what he has or hasn't done. And then there's other guys who so much of their career is tied into Michael. Whether it's Wilbon, or why does Barkley get a pass for not winning? Well, he ran into Michael Jordan. All of this. So you have a whole media machine. And then folks have the audacity, the absolute audacity to act like it's shocking that LeBron might occasionally push back or might say, you guys changed the rules mid-game. And this isn't how you've treated guys previously. And so that's what they're talking about. And I think it's reasonable. I don't know if there's a fix for it. I think maybe the fix for it is for when LeBron retires, this whole thing resets. But honestly, maybe not.